Okay, well, having looked at all four countries on the short list, right, actually visited the places and really talking to the government officials involved, Intel now, right, was in a good position to really decide, okay, where are we going to go? And so I think they had already ruled out Brazil and Chile for various reasons. We talked about that. But the choice really then came to the choice was Mexico versus Costa Rica. And as I mentioned, Mexico already, at least the state of Jalisco, already had everything that Intel needed. It's a great location. The city of Guadalajara, by the way, is I got to say, a little bit. It's a more happening place in some ways, you could say, than downtown San Jose, Costa Rica. I personally always, I've traveled to Guadalajara many, many times. I love Guadalajara. Man, that's if I had to vote, I'd say, hey, I'm Guadalajara, right? No doubt. Fantastic place. Lots of U.S. expatriate people retire there. And then, just from Intel's perspective, I mean, NAFTA, the fact, free trade with Mexico and the proximity, just a couple of hours, right? Costa Rica also close, but Mexico. This is there's many things, but of course we saw the negative aspects, the concern, at least the perception on the part of the Intel executives about this, the special deals that CEPROE, the State Government Investment Promotion Agency, the state of Jalisco, they say, oh, you could have a white union. Oh my gosh, that seems like a special deal, even though. Right, almost every U.S. manufacturing company that manufactures in Mexico has one of those white unions, as I mentioned. So I think they had that sort of quandary there. But then, of course, Costa Rica, so many negatives, right? The inadequate numbers of skilled technicians. Intel said if we invest there, we're going to be like a whale in a fishbowl that just, swamp, with our demands alone for technical workers, we'll be employing everybody, right? So there was these concerns, but then, of course, as I mentioned, the Investment and Promotion Agency, CINDE, which had briefed the government officials, had explained to them, here's how you can present it, explain how you can change that without making it a special deal for Intel. But again, all of these proposed changes were just promises, right? But on the other hand, that you didn't need a labor union. You didn't, they had very attractive tax incentives. So I think, the question is, where would you go? I'm putting my hands up just for my own selfish reasons. I love Guadalajara, but Costa Rica, beautiful too. If you're into ecotourism and that kind of thing, if you like the rainfall and so on, it's wonderful. I love Costa Rica too, but pura vida, right? All that. But the thing is, what did Intel decide to do? Well, we know what they did. They chose Costa Rica, right? And I must say the executives at Motorola in Guadalajara when I talked to them about it, they could not believe, they were appalled, right? Why would they do this? I mean, here we have everything you need, plenty of skilled workers. What are they doing? What are they thinking of? Going to Costa Rica? Are they crazy? What? But remember, the Intel team had done a very rigorous site selection process. And so I think that in the end, that's what they chose. Now, if we go back and we think about this, what happened? Let me tell you what happened. They invested in Costa Rica. They did invest. The government, as promised, did come through with increasing the numbers of technical workers. It did come through with improving the numbers of flights in and out. They already had those plans in the works, as I said, the Open Skies plan. They did provide a discount for heavy users of electrical power. But I think it's interesting to notice what happened. Exactly as Jose Maria Figueres, the president of Costa Rica, had predicted, investors noticed that Intel had gone to Costa Rica and said, gee, maybe we should give Costa Rica a second look. And so then I think, the other investors, Intel being there did serve as like an anchor investment that, first of all, attracted lots of Intel suppliers, but then also other companies said, we need to think about Costa Rica as well. And you started to see this incredible influx of what in Costa Rica they call non-traditional foreign direct investment. And that means anything that isn't bananas or coffee. And so you saw this massive increase in things that Synday was interested in attracting, things like medical device plants, manufacturing plants, and call centers, and other kinds of investments. And so what is interesting, if you look at the non-traditional foreign direct investment in Costa Rica after Intel, it just increases dramatically. So I think that the plan that Jose Maria Figueres, the vision that president of Costa Rica had to turn Costa Rica into this high-tech investment haven, to transform the economy away from just exporting bananas and coffee into something more, really worked. Costa Rica now, its main export is microprocessors, right? It's transformed things, and so many other high-tech companies have come that the economy is providing jobs and employment for other kinds of things beyond just picking bananas, right, or picking coffee beans. So I think that really worked. But what are the lessons from Intel's perspective, right? And I think a couple of key lessons here. First of all, it shows the importance, and this is why I think this case is really a best practices case of how to do this kind of thing. It shows the importance of picking a location with stable, predictable, transparent rules of the game. Because think about it, Intel invested there in the plant in the late 1990s. They stayed all that time for decades, right after this. And what is interesting is new governments came and went, different presidents, different political parties, but the rules never changed. Well, let me just make a small amendment to that. There was a slight change, right? Because initially Intel had a requirement, or the Costa Rica had a requirement for those free trade zones that if you invested there, you could get these great tax incentives as long as you exported 100% of what you produced. Well, that, of course, is violates the WTO requirements that says you can't provide export subsidies. So Costa Rica, working with WTO, changed that, but here's how they changed it. They said, you can invest here, and we're not going to require you export a certain amount. We only require that you invest a certain amount. And so, of course, that wasn't a change that affected Intel in any way, but the significant thing is the tax incentives did not change, right? You had this incredible valuable situation of getting the no taxes for 8 years, the 50% reduction for the next 4 years, and of course Intel did reinvest and did get these amazing tax incentives. And so government after government from different political parties came, different presidents, and that never changed. So I think that Intel was right to select a location that did have these stable, predictable, transparent rules of the game. And as I mentioned, in Mexico, after Intel made its investment, there were later elections where the populist, business sort of candidate almost won, came really close, within 1% of the vote of winning the presidential election in 2006, and then almost as close in 2012. So I think what is significant is that Intel, I think, was right to pick a location, and that's something that it makes very clear. We do this because we have so many far-flung operations. We can't just keep track of every little special deal, and this is really important to us. We don't want the rules to change on us. Okay, so that's a key lesson, I think, from this case. Another takeaway from this case is the importance of bargaining. And I think it's really significant that Intel, wherever it went, the team, and I've got to say, this is one lesson Ted did learn, right, from my class, is when the team went to a location, spoke with government officials, the investment agency there, they said, look, yes, we're very interested in investing in your location, but we are considering other options, right? We have other countries that are also interested in attracting us, so please give us the best deal you can within the rules, right? Give us the best tax incentives, but don't give us any special deals, but give us whatever you can do within those rules. So I think that bargaining aspect was significant, and that's why these governments were just doing everything they could within the rules, if they could, and Costa Rica certainly did that to try to win Intel's investment. So that enhanced, Intel's bargaining power significantly. Now, there's one little story I didn't put into the case there, But just to kind of to illustrate how much bargaining power Intel had, keep in mind in Costa Rica, the president, Jose Maria Figueres, was really eager to attract Intel's investment. He knew Intel was considering other locations. So he was really doing everything he could to be accommodating to Intel's requests and so on. So when the team said, we're interested in a location in the Central Valley, maybe there's a way we could see that, he said, well, I'll tell you what, come to the airport at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, and I'll have the presidential helicopter take you around. Now, here's the part that I put into the case. I did put this part into the case. When they got to the airport at 7 a.m., right, who did they see at the controls of the helicopter? The president himself was at the controls. He was going to fly them around. He had he knew how to fly a helicopter, so he was going to take them around himself. And so that, I think, shows you, how much bargaining clout Intel really had. Now, the part I did not put in the case was that as Ted was getting in the helicopter, right, to fly around with the president's staff quickly stepped away. And Ted said, "Oh, aren't you coming with us?" And they said, "Oh no, too dangerous. He's a terrible pilot. We're not going." Right? So I think poor Ted, in that situation, had to do the good T-bird thing and just, get on and hope for the best. And from what I understand, the president was doing crazy things, flying into cones of volcanoes and these kinds of things, but he survived. So the bottom line, though, I think that this shows, that Intel had a lot of bargaining power. Now, some people say in Costa Rica, when I was there and I was speaking to people about this, the president, he maybe went too far, right, in giving too much to Intel, but I think, think of the benefits to Costa Rica. Costa Rica, as I mentioned, attracted all of this new investment. It did become known as sort of this hub or investment haven for high-tech companies. Other companies noticed, the site selection team. So I think in some ways you could say, yes, Intel had a lot of bargaining power. At the same time, this was a great benefit to Costa Rica as well. It was a win-win. One little side note, of course, it's true that recently, Intel, right after years of being, since 1997, having that plant there and investing and expanding, putting the shared services center there for Latin America, putting software development centers there, really significant additional investments, has recently decided to move the manufacturing plant itself out of Costa Rica. And what has happened is over time, the wages have risen. Costa Rica has become so successful, right, that costs have risen a little bit. But you see, that's a good thing. The Costa Rican development, right, has transformed the economy. This was the plan. And so what's interesting is Intel has decided to move the, relatively speaking, lower skilled portion of the manufacturing operation to another location. But at the same time, they're keeping the really high value-added stuff, the shared services center, the software development center in Costa Rica. So this really represents the transformation that has occurred in the Costa Rican economy that, Cinde, by the way, is now targeting higher value-added kinds of activities just like this. And this is the kind of success, in a sense, that they wanted to see. And so I think that is really a major benefit. And one thing I wanted to say is there's one more lesson that really, they were the important lessons here, I think, for any manager to take away from this case. But there's one particular lesson that I wish Ted Telford had learned from all this. And here it is. It's come to class. Because remember, Ted, he didn't know certain things about Chile or this or that, and think he would have been even more effective if he had come to class every day. And so I think that's my final lesson of the day for that case. But I think you can see that this case offers some valuable lessons for any manager that would be applicable in any kind of investment situation like this.